My name's Colin Marshall. This is the Marketplace of Ideas.
This week on the Marketplace of Ideas, Jessa Crispin, founder and editor of Bookslut, the blog and literary webzine, talking about graphic novels, David Lynch, food writing, and of course, Neil Gaiman.
The internet 5 years ago was such a strange little place. And so a lot of the stuff that's standard now, like blogs, there weren't even really blogs. So yeah, we just sort of figured things out. We went along and corrected them when we realized we were screwing up. And, it was all sort of an experiment and accidental, and it was fun.
See also the Marketplace of Ideas podcast on iTunes. For my money, the easiest, most convenient way to subscribe to all the podcasts you love. Get the Marketplace every week by popping open your iTunes, going to the iTunes store, and searching for the Marketplace of Ideas.
God bless the child that could write his own rhyme.
My guest is Jessa Crispin. She founded and runs the popular Chicago-based monthly webzine and blog Bookslut. Jessa, welcome to the Marketplace of Ideas.
Hi.
Just a few days ago, I was talking to Mark Sarvis from The Elegant Variation about what gap his presence fills in the existing literary blogosphere, so I'd like to put the question to you. The absence of what exactly prompted you to start up Bookslut?
Basically, it was, Bookslut started in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, or not 2001, sorry, 2002. At that time, the only other real literary website was MobyLiz.com that was updated with any regularity.
Yeah.
And MobyLiz was so fantastic that it was primarily focused on the industry. Like what publishers were doing.
Exactly.
Book deals. So I wanted something that was mainly focused on books and authors, and not so much the business of it. So that was pretty much what the whole deciding factor was.
And you've once been quoted as saying that you founded it for one of the reasons it was in order to get free books. I hear that's worked out for you.
A little too well, unfortunately.
Where do you put them all?
In stacks. I have people that come over with regularity and take them away.
It's good to hear you have a system. Now, one of the elements of the Bookslut mythos, I guess I'll call it, is that you grew up in small-town Kansas, away from even the Walden books. Is that literally the case?
Yeah, that was 45 minutes away. That was the closest bookstore.
Ouch.
It was a town of about 1,200 people. Like a lot of kids in rural Kansas, Andrew Carnegie sort of saved our lives because if it weren't for him, there would be no library in our town. So that was my entire lifeline because, the Walden books, while it was great for getting Christopher Pike books, that was about it.
My teacher was an alien?
Yes. No, I was obsessed with Christopher Pike for like a 2-year period.
Oh dear. You've already started spilling your secrets.
Yeah.
Unless you've said that on the blog, you may have. But
I may have mentioned my love for Christopher Pike before, yeah.
So in that library, what did you discover that opened your eyes?
Oh, man. I fell in love with Gary Paulson in a really huge way.
Hatchet.
Yes, Hatchet. Like all of his books are so incredible.
Have you read all the sequels to Hatchet, even the recent one?
I haven't read the new one, no, because I was afraid of, going back and discovering that my childhood love was not so great.
Yeah, I'm afraid it sucks, too.
Yeah, have you read it?
I'm afraid that it sucks.
Yeah.
That's why I haven't read it. Too much fear.
Yeah. Gary Paulson, my dad was a big science fiction fan.
Oh.
So we grew up reading Isaac Asimov and Ray Bradbury and the Dune series. The Dune series was actually like my nighttime bedtime story.
Oh, really?
When I was 4. So that sort of warped what I was reading as a
Led
child.
to dreams of sandworms?
Yeah, I remember the passages of sandworms better than probably anything I've read in my entire life.
I think I remember you mentioning on the blog quite some time ago that you wanted to revisit the Dune film that Lynch did, but you're not so sure you actually want to, in the same way as Hatchet.
Yeah. Although, I used to do the death scenes from Dune, as 6 years old at the dinner table. I was quite an annoying child, I'm just now realizing.
I will tell you that Dune still holds up very well visually.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, David Lynch, man.
We'll talk about him a little later. So, you've probably heard enough questions about your site's name to last you a lifetime, but I just have to know, what are the defining characteristics of a book slut?
Someone who, reads widely and doesn't just give what's available,
Someone who puts in the effort.
Right, you're not taking your list from the New York Times, and you're not just reading one genre. You're sort of looking around and see what's out there. You
wouldn't see a book slut, a true book slut, reading like Marley and Me on the subway.
Right, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Unless you're punishing yourself for sins or something.
So can anybody, given sufficient time, effort, and inclination, become a book slut?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Is that part of your site's mission, to help get some converts to the book slut cause?
Well, yeah, it was just sort of giving voice to writers that weren't available other places, that aren't being mentioned. We cover a lot of beginning writers, writers with their first books who are really good, but it's so hard for them to get mentioned anywhere else. It's so hard for a first-time writer to get reviewed unless they're really attractive.
You're thinking of who's the girl who did Special Topics in Calamity Physics?
Oh yeah, Marissa Pessel.
The fun thing is about that is that it's not even based on the attractiveness of her herself. It's the attractiveness of a single picture that's obviously highly posed.
Yes.
Which I find
airbrushed.
It looks like a centerfold. It's anyway.
And she doesn't look anything like. I
know.
Looks like that, but she doesn't look like that.
I had a conversation with Mark Sarvis about Marissa Pessel. I'm pretty pestled out, so I'll move on to asking you, who were the authors, the under-recognized authors, the non-Pessels of the world, who you have most enthusiastically championed?
Well, it's been interesting watching Shalom Auslander get really big. Because, I was so enthusiastic about his first book, and sort of no one was talking about it. But now his memoir is huge, so that's interesting. This Joanna Kavanagh, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly at all. She has her second book. It's called Inglorious, and I just love it so much. And it got treated as chick-lit.
Oh, yes, chick-lit.
And because it has this horrible cover.
It has the chick-lit sort of cover, that classic look.
The book is about this girl who's basically having a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
And so the way the publisher decided to illustrate that on the cover was, it's like a pair of women's legs in high heels, but one of the straps is broken.
Oh, dear.
The metaphor.
Oh, dear.
It's so hideous. So I really like her. Tatiana Tolstaya, who's sort of obscure. Her collected short stories, White Walls, just came out and is so incredible. That's what I'm thinking of right now.
What kind of sense of satisfaction does it give you to help popularize an author that you think deserves it?
Oh, I don't know if that actually happened.
You've got to have some effect. It's a pretty widely read sort of a deal you got going on.
Yeah, but it's sort of, you just sort of add to the buzz, And sometimes you start it, but it's never just one thing that sort of builds a book.
That's right.
It doesn't seem like it has to reach some sort of critical mass. So, it's nice to sort of gesture towards a book, but I think at the end of the day, that's all it is. Although, we do what we can, and we know that the space that we have is valuable, so we want to write about these books instead of, like the new Don DeLillo, because who cares?
And everybody already knows anyway. They're going to buy it no matter what.
Yeah, they're going to, and if they're going to read it, they're going to read it, and if not, they're not. But if we can, hey, there's this really amazing Mia Gallagher book, you should maybe read it even though you have to order it from the UK.
Amazon.co.uk.
Yeah, Amazon UK is a beautiful thing.
That's true. I was going to ask you, I'm sure you've gotten emails from people, rather, who are thanking you for having introduced them to these certain authors.
Yeah.
And that's got to be somewhat satisfying, right?
Yes, it's much more satisfying than the emails I get from authors who are like, at 3 o'clock in the morning, drunk and Googling themselves, and how dare you?
Does that happen often?
Well, it doesn't happen that often, but when it does, it's sort of shocking.
You get drunk 3 a.m. emails from authors. These are men and women of letters who are drunk emailing Bookslut.
Man, if only I could share them with the world, but I do, I have been there. I've never written a publication, but,
You've got to just print out all those emails, put them in a folder, and just write, in the event of my death, release these to the media.
Exactly.
And, so you no repercussions then.
Yeah.
So Bookslut is a webzine. How much of the webzine format did you have to invent for Bookslut?
Oh, a lot of it, actually. I mean, we sort of had to figure all that out. There wasn't really... The internet 5 years ago was such a strange little place.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the stuff that's standard now, like blogs, there weren't even really blogs. And
that's right.
So, yeah, I mean, we just sort of figured things out as we went along and corrected them when we realized we were screwing up. And, it was all sort of an experiment and accidental, and it was fun.
So it was a lot of playing by ear, to use a tired cliche.
Yes, absolutely.
I see. Bookslut has book reviews, obviously, and there's been a lot of talk in so many of the blogs, less on yours, but on a lot of the ones that reference yours, about a crisis in book reviewing, so-called. Do you think there is one?
That's such a tricky question, because up until, last week, I was on the board of the National Book Critics Circle. And they were the ones that started it. And so I'll just give my little vague little answer so I don't annoy anyone too much, which is, I think that there is a crisis in book reviewing, but it's not what people are talking about.
Oh, okay. Well, what is it?
I think it's more quality than quantity. That's the problem.
So there are book reviews, though that isn't in crisis so much as the book reviews are getting suckier?
Kinda, yeah.
I see. And do you mean in the print world specifically, like newspapers, or?
Yeah, I mean, the newspapers specifically. I mean, I think the internet is picking up a lot of the slack, but, and there are still places like the London Review of Books, which I fetishize a little bit, but, okay, I really can't talk anymore about this issue.
That's fine. You can stop as soon as you want on the crisis in book reviewing.
Thank you.
Now, a little more positive. What's your favorite book reviewing print publication? Is it the London Review?
Yes, it is, absolutely.
And what do they give you that no one else can?
Andrew O'Hagan.
Okay, there we go.
Pretty much that. I mean, I think that the books that they choose to review are very interesting. They give the reviewers a lot of space and a lot of freedom, it seems like. That's the one that I read regularly. There aren't a lot that I will make a point of reading, and that one I subscribe to. It's part of my Sunday ritual, and that is pretty much it.
You've put in time in both the Austin and Chicago literary scenes. Where do you say they fit into the grand scheme? What distinguishes them besides location from, say, your New York Cities or your Los Angeleses?
Well, Chicago doesn't really have a publishing scene. It has some tiny little independents. It has an excellent poetry scene, but all of publishing exists in New York. And I think that's sort of dangerous because you get New Yorkers making decisions about all of publishing, and New Yorkers tend to be really fascinated with New York.
Oh, yes, they certainly do.
And so if you don't live in New York, you see the choices being made by publishers, and they're giving these, six-figure advances to a book about, a satire of Manhattan real estate, and you're just like, really? I know this isn't going to sell. I don't know why you can't figure that out. So I think just that's part of it. Like, everybody who is in the literary scenes outside of New York has, I think, a fantastic distance from it. But you do get ignored if you're not in New York by the publishers and by publications, and it is strange, the line. I mean, it really is New York, New Jersey, and then the rest of the country.
Oh, really? It's really a two-tier sort of a system there.
Yeah.
So you've written a little bit on the blogs about your comments on the situation with independent bookstores. Will they survive or won't they in both those locations? What are your thoughts on that?
About independent bookstores?
Yeah.
I think, it is a little distressing when so many independent bookstores in like San Francisco close, because you always think of San Francisco as like the last.
Yeah, exactly.
They're the canary. I mean, if it's bad there, then God, the rest of the country. Yeah, Chicago has some fantastic independents that are really healthy. So it's hard for me to think about it on like a national scale. But I think everything is changing. I think publishing is in danger of collapsing if things don't change. And I think that's the same thing with bookstores. And I think that was like the first warning sign, was when the independents started to go. It's like things are really changing and no one's really figured out how to do it in a new way yet. I think that the smaller publishers are doing more interesting things because they have to, they're closer to the ground. And so I think that all of that is connected to the fact that literature is changing, publishing is changing. There's so few cultural touchstones in books anymore.
I see.
I think all of that is connected, and I don't think anyone knows what the answer is yet.
So there's something that the major book publishers are failing to recognize?
Yeah, I think they are they have their fingers in their ears, la, la, la.
Singing to themselves.
We're just going to keep doing what we're doing and hope for the best. And I'm like, good luck.
If you had control over these publishers, what would you tell them to do to save themselves?
Oh, Lord Almighty. I don't know. I mean, I don't know it any better than anybody else does. I've been trying to figure it out.
Oh, I see,
I've been watching this from a distance. I think they can learn from small publishers and just cut back how much they produce,
Fewer copies of Marley and Me.
Yeah, I mean, not just that, but fewer books.
Yes.
Fewer signs, fewer authors. Like the advanced system, I think, has got to change.
It's gotten out of control, you think?
Yeah, because if authors want to get big advances because they want to be able to live off of their writing, but if they don't make it back, their career is pretty much ruined.
Yeah.
And it is true that if you don't make back your advance, you're going to have a really hard time getting a second book published. So I think that everybody just needs to, start over.
Just sort of get a do-over?
Yeah, I think maybe.
I see. So speaking of huge advances, I wanted to get your thoughts on the subject of the celebrity author.
Oh, yes.
And I know you have thoughts.
Yes, I have thoughts. They serve their little purpose. I mean, no, I don't think anybody's deluded into thinking that anything that they write will be, in print in 15 years.
Not lasting work.
Yeah, it's sort of outside the system altogether. It gets the publisher's money, it gets the celebrity money. It's the equivalent of reading Us Weekly. That's what happens.
I hear you're especially skeptical about the quality, shall we say, of Zadie Smith's work.
I think she's. Oh,
you don't have to you don't have to rag on her. I wonder what your thoughts are on her books.
I think that she is going to be so talented.
Oh, that's the future.
I think that White Teeth is not close to being done, and I think that maybe the success of that book has not been good for her career, as far as increasing the quality of her writing.
I see.
I think the toil is good. I feel like young people should not maybe write books.
You think she's gotten feedback that says, don't try any harder because we love you like you are?
Well, I think that's what money does.
Oh, I see.
And then the pressure to write another book because, you know, your publisher is saying, well, your audience is waiting, and, you know, I'm sure she has multiple book contracts. So there's a lot to work up for, and that doesn't give a lot of time for just working on it. And, you know, I mean, I don't know her situation.
Yeah.
I honestly don't think that, like, her 3 books don't do a thing for me, but I can see the talent in it. It's just that, you know, she's close.
Is there any young author of a certain level of recognition that you do think has it right now?
Define young.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a good, and it does mean a different thing in the world of letters. Let's call it under 35. Under
35. I'm trying to think of authors who I know are young. Who have it.
Yeah.
That's hard. You know, like most of the writers that I read are, you know, I mean, Joanna Kavanagh, I think I don't know how old she is, but she wrote a fantastic book that was structurally sound and interesting and funny and very, very touching.
I'll look up her age on the Wikipedia, and we'll see if she counts later, though.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. Like, most of the writers I read tend to be, like, in their mid-30s that I think are doing really well for debut writers.
Let's talk about chick lit. Do you think chick lit is an actual genre or some sort of marketing device?
No, I think it's a genre.
It is a genre.
I think that it's vile.
Vile.
and simplistic.
I see.
And it's the equivalent of, you know, a Disney version of Sleeping Beauty. You know, it's taking these ideas and dumbing them down to a remarkable degree.
Do you see it just getting more malignant, we'll say? Do you see it just spreading, or is it at a sort of stasis where this is as bad as chick lit's going to get?
I think that it peaked, and now it's sort of dying down. There hasn't really been a big chick lit book. You know, there hasn't really been a breakout in a while. So, you know, God willing, it'll continue to be that. I just worry women who read it.
Oh, do you meet many women who do read chick lit religiously or regularly or what have you?
Yes, I do.
Oh, really? And what are they like?
I'm not going to generalize too much, but, you know, like, it's such a fantasy. Like, this idea that it's distressing to me that there's this genre of women's literature that is total just waiting for a white knight, and that's exactly what it is. Like, you know,
oh dear.
And it bothers me a lot.
Is it like the Harlequin romance novels of this generation?
Yeah, I mean, it really sort of is. It's, you know, like, except for now the women have jobs and they're not on a pirate ship, you know? Like,
I have talked to a few women who, they would not touch a romance novel with Fabio on the cover, but they will pick up I don't know how to describe it, those sort of primary color, very simplistic imagery chick lit books you see around on the I'm talking about a certain kind of cover. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. The candy-coated.
Yeah, exactly.
With the shoes on it. Yeah, and I'd feel better if women were reading the Fabio romance, because at least there's, like, some good sex in that. There's no good sex in chick lit.
Oh, that's terrible. And what do you even get out of that book?
I don't know.
I had something else to ask about chick lit, but I can't remember, so let's move on to another Bookslut favorite genre, and that's food writing. You've gone on record many a time as admiring Anthony Bourdain. What does he give you that others do not in the food writing genre?
He's my ideal man.
I thought Neil Gaiman was your ideal man.
No, I mean, Neil, you know, I can't say that. I know Neil.
Oh, okay.
Back to Anthony Bourdain. He's got this hedonist streak that I find very appealing. As opposed
to other food writers who
get bogged down in ethics, and I mean, the ethics debate is so important, but I think it's refreshing that he's like, screw organic. You know, like,
I like that a lot too.
Yeah, and also, you know, the kid travels the world looking for this stuff, and I'm appreciative of that too, as being a traveler myself.
Do you think he is as effective a TV personality as he is a literary personality?
I love his TV show so much. I think he almost works better on TV. We need more scowling on the Travel Channel. I think so he provides that. Yeah.
After reading his books, I read all the books, and then I saw the show, and I don't know why, I didn't actually intellectually expect this, but I sort of had it in my mind that he had some kind of tough Cockney accent, and then I realized, no, he doesn't. He's from America.
No, he's from New York.
Yeah, and I knew that. I read the books, and I expected, I don't know, some football hooligan. I don't know. But yes, Anthony Bourdain, thumbs up. Who else in the food writing world do you like?
I like Gina Mallet. Gina Mallet, sorry.
Okay.
I always wanted to pronounce her name as if she's French, and she's not.
The canonical pronunciation is, in fact, Mallet?
Mallet.
Okay, if I have her on the show, I'll know. I won't embarrass myself.
She wrote this book called Last Chance to Eat, which was about sort of fast food, and then, like the other end of it was the regulation against food, like the Mcleod ban here in Chicago, which is ridiculous. And so she sort of goes to both ends of it.
I see. And that was a book praised by Bourdain himself, wasn't it? I believe.
Yeah, that was why I read it, because his blurb.
Oh, okay. His Midas hand touched it, and he read it. For those just tuning in, my guest is Jessa Crispin, founder and editor of Chicago-based webzine and blog Bookslut. Okay, next Bookslut topic that I wanted to cover is biggest one of all, I think, graphic novels, or what do you call them?
I call them comics.
Okay, comics. I'm always afraid to call them comics because it seems to imply comedy to me,
Yeah. I don't think anybody's happy with any of the terminology.
We got to invent something new, but I'll work on that later. I'll call them comics for now, since that's what you're going with. How do you explain the continued persistence of the comic books aren't just for kids anymore journalistic angle?
Because people are lazy.
Oh, I see.
People are lazy and they get paid by the word.
I getcha. They just need a lead, and comic books aren't for kids, is it, every single time?
Yes.
Oh, dear.
I mean, sometimes there was a couple of years where it stopped, but it's been creeping back lately, so...
And other countries have gotten that comics are for everyone. The obvious example, maybe the tired example, is Japan, but others too. Why do you think America has not?
Because America was saturated with superheroes.
Yes.
America basically invented superhero comics, and the rest of the world didn't have that burden of that definition. So they could work outside of that and not be... like, what are you doing? Comics have capes.
Yeah, and we're like 20 years into the era of the brooding, sort of intellectualized superhero as well that isn't necessarily for kids, and yet the country doesn't seem to have... They're not up with, like, The Dark Knight Returns yet.
Yeah, I think that the movies are helping. But, even then... the intellectuals don't want to read comic books. I see. So, I don't know if there's any hope for that in the long run.
Speaking of comic book reading intellectuals, what do you think of Scott Mcleod's work on comics?
I think it's really interesting if you're, like a creator.
Yeah.
I don't really read them because I know how to read a comic book.
Oh, you know how to go left to right and then down?
Yeah. And I don't... plan on writing my own. So, but I think that it's important that somebody's out there sort of trying to legitimize it.
I see.
That's what I think what he's doing.
What graphic novelists or comic book artists or comic book producers do you think deserve to be household names that aren't?
Oh, David B.
David B. Epileptic.
Book, yeah, it was so incredible, and I really wish it had gotten more attention. It was interesting seeing the Alison Bechdel book really break out.
Yeah.
And I liked it, but I was like, well, why didn't this happen for Epileptic? It was so much better. But these things you can't control. So, yeah, I think David B. I really like this Italian artist, Skippy, who is just now getting published by Fantagraphics in First Second. And then Eddie Campbell, who I think is a genius.
Oh, yes.
his Fate of the Artist that came out last year was one of my favorite books last year.
Oh, that's right.
And I think he's best known for illustrating From Hell with Alan Moore.
Yeah.
So he's always sort of mentioned secondarily to Alan Moore, but I think he's just brilliant.
So let's talk a little bit about Alan Moore. I wanted to get your opinion on this. What did you think of Lost Girls? And I guess before we talk about that, I should explain what Lost Girls is. There's going to be someone in the audience who doesn't know, and maybe you can help me out here. Lost Girls is a 3-part, very large graphic novel / comic book, whatever. Alan Moore described it as pornography. That was the word he used, but high-class pornography, featuring 3 characters who may or may not be Alice, Wendy, and Dorothy from Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, and The Wizard of Oz. Mm-hmm. And it features them engaging in certain acts. This is public radio, so we got to just not name specific actions or body parts or excretions. Then I think we're okay.
Yeah.
So what did you think of this grand work? It is a literally large book. I bought it for my girlfriend for Christmas last year. She seemed to enjoy it.
I liked it. I didn't think it was brilliant. I always find it interesting when people play with other people's characters, but at this thing, I felt like it was a bit of a shortcut.
I see.
You're using these archetypes, and all those 3 girls are archetypes. And you're just sort of plugging them into pornography to make a statement, but it felt like a shortcut. It felt like they weren't quite getting there.
You think it was a little bit half-baked conceptually?
Yeah, and the connections between the scenes felt a little forced.
Uh-huh.
And I also had this weird problem with it where I couldn't stand the way the tongues were drawn.
Oh, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
I was like, oh, God, stop that.
For those who haven't seen Lost Girls, the tongues look a little odd. They bend at, weird angles.
Yeah, they're pointy in this weird way. It took me out.
Do you think it works as pornography, as Moore claimed to intend?
I guess it depends on what you think pornography is for.
Yeah, it's a good question. I find it isn't. I find it hits that weird zone between too realistic and not realistic enough. Yeah.
I think that is a problem.
And that I would blame more on the art than the writing.
Really, I thought it was more the writing.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
I thought the art was
half and half, I'd say.
Yeah.
The art was good. It just was odd.
Yeah, no, the tongues really were.
Can't get past those tongues. Okay, moving on. What do you think of Chris Ware's work?
I think it's pretty.
Oh, I see.
I kind of don't want to read it.
You can't get with the emotions or ideas behind it?
No, I totally can. That's, I don't know, part of the problem, maybe.
Oh, I see.
No, I think he's really, really good. I get these, I have these issues when, somebody starts a trend.
Oh, I see.
And then I start blaming the person that started it. So
Yeah.
Chris Ware started this trend of, these, emo boy comic books that aren't nearly as good. And for some reason, I associate all of them with Chris Ware, and it's unfair baggage.
Yeah.
I completely understand them being completely unfair.
For those who have never seen Chris Ware's books, they are beautifully drawn. They're stylistically, I would call them excellent. Maybe a once-in-a-generation stylistic talent that we have in Chris Ware. But there is a pervasive, debilitating sadness to them. Mm-hmm. And that makes it a little tough.
Yeah. Yes, it does.
And it seems to run through all of his work. He's pretty good at holding on to that theme, I think.
Yeah. And I kind of wish that he would, I don't need happy, joy all the time. But it is a little bit like when people just work with one color on their palette.
Yeah,
it's like, I have some red. Do you want some red?
You've mentioned Neil Gaiman as a hero many times. We brought him up earlier. And what do you think that Neil Gaiman, in his writing, brings to his fiction and his comic books that he writes for? Is it the same thing in both, the same Neil Gaiman essence?
I think I think it's all, he's so inventive, he doesn't do anything twice, honestly. Yeah. And I think his ideas are just incredible. I think he has absolutely incredible ideas. So, I think his brain doesn't work like most people's brains, and I appreciate that.
That's a very good thing. He seems to have had a lot more success in what he does than all of his peers. At least that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. I mean, he's. I think that the fact that he's wildly attractive doesn't hurt with like the 16-year-old girl fan base. You know what he's got going on.
He seems to have a singular effect on 16-year-old girls.
Well, he's got that Scorpio energy. It's hard to beat.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it seems to me the only part of it is actually his appearance.
Yeah, no, it's the whole. There's the whole mystique. Like, he walks around with his own smoke machine or something. I'm not sure what it is.
I've seen him these days, and sometimes he goes out looking pretty scraggly, but still, they love him.
Yeah, no, still, and that's the thing. Like, my male friends are like, "What? What?" I'm like, "No, he's pretty." And
yeah.
What? So, I don't know what it is. Those things you can't define or explain.
What do you think his work itself taps into to make it so successful? It can't just be the 16-year-old girls holding this man up.
No, I mean, he's working with bloodlines that are old, I mean, his stories are so myth-based, and there's a reason why those things still hold up. I mean, he's just working in a territory that so few writers work anymore. So many writers work in these sort of psychological modes.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I read some Freud. And he's like, oh, I read, the history of Greece. Oh, here's mine.
Oh, dear. So there's a lot of reasons this man is appealing. We can conclude with that, at least intact.
Yes.
He has a lot of its.
Yes, he does.
So back to the more literary, more text-based world, I wanted to get your thoughts on, I don't quite know what to call this phenomenon, but I've talked with a few people about it. It's the sort of McSweeney's Believer aesthetic that's getting a little more prevalent. Yeah. It's championed by Dave Eggers, among many others. There's kind of a pack there.
Yeah.
What do you think of them?
You're trying to get me in trouble again.
I don't need you to rag on them. Just vague impressions, maybe, if that's what you want to give.
I think that they're clever. And so whether or not clever has any appeal to you is, that might be, that's all you need. So, and then you should go with that. I'm trying to be as vague as possible. Yeah. I think they're clever.
So cleverness as a wider-reaching phenomenon, that's gaining quite a bit of a foothold these days, isn't it? Aside from just McSweeney's, there is an upsurge of cleverness.
Yeah, there's an upsurge of cleverness and preciousness, and I'm trying not to say those words as if they're dirty.
I can always bleep whatever needs to be bleeped.
Yeah. So, it holds appeal just for some people.
One more set of thoughts on figures that aren't literary people. We said we'd bring up David Lynch again, so David Lynch, what are your thoughts on him?
Oh, I love, worship, and adore David Lynch.
Oh dear. What did you think of Inland Empire, his latest?
I haven't. It's in my Netflix queue. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, David Lynch and Cronenberg.
Oh, really?
Those are two of my favorites.
Have you seen Eastern Promises yet?
I have. It's very, very good.
I'm going to see that tonight. I'm glad to hear it's all I've heard, all I've been promised.
Yes, it's very good.
So of the Lynch catalog, and we'll start with this David first, what is your favorite?
David Lynch favorite. Elephant Man, maybe?
Oh, really? Elephant Man?
Yeah.
That's an unusual pick. You're going to have to justify it, you understand.
Am I?
Well, it's just not the one people usually pick.
I know. It's not, is it? No, I think it's beautifully filmed.
Yeah.
I think, I have a crush on John Hurt.
Okay. You watch The Elephant Man and you have a crush on John Hurt as a result?
No. I had a crush on John Hurt before.
Oh, okay. Because that was going to open up a whole new avenue of questions.
Yeah, no, that's a little bit, yeah. So maybe Mulholland Drive?
Oh, okay. That's also that's a very popular one to pick. On the other end of the spectrum, few people pick The Elephant Man, many pick Mulholland Drive. As a bit of a comeback for him after Lost Highway and Wild at Heart, which did you think those were as substandard as many Lynch fans?
I liked Wild at Heart. Lost Highway, I feel like it's my fault.
You did it. I knew it.
Yeah. Yeah, but I feel like I just need to see it 10 more times, and then maybe it'll be okay.
And finally it'll fall into place for you?
Yeah.
Well, I'd wait until there's an actual decent DVD release of it. I saw one just a week ago, and it was, I hate to say this, but it was full screen.
Oh, no? Really?
It looked like it was transferred from the VHS tape.
Oh, that makes me sad.
Yeah, and I could tell it wasn't Lynch authorized because there were chapter stops. And for those non-Lynch fans out there, Lynch does not approve of chapter stops on DVDs.
Yeah. Huh, that's bizarre.
Yeah, so we're all waiting. I was waiting so long for it to be on DVD at all, but now we get a crappy one. Anyway, yeah. David Cronenberg. What's your favorite Cronenberg?
Oh, maybe Dead Ringers.
Oh, mine too. Mine too.
Oh, I love Dead Ringers.
And that's an uncommon one to say, and people look at me funny when I say it.
Do they really?
Do they look at you funny?
I like it a lot. Huh?
Do they look at you funny when you say Dead Ringers is your favorite?
I don't think... my friends tend not to watch Cronenberg films.
Oh, really?
My friends make candy. You know?
Oh, that's too bad. Couldn't they make candy while they watch Dead Ringers?
I think that maybe I have the darkest sensibility of all my friends.
I guess for the audience, maybe some of you haven't seen Dead Ringers. I'd be sad if you didn't. But it's about twin gynecologists played by Jeremy Irons, and it gets pretty dark pretty quick.
Oh, yes, it does.
But a virtuoso performance from Mr. Irons, I would say, better than his performance in Dungeons & Dragons. Yeah. Did you happen to read, by the way, getting a little bit back to Lynch, did you happen to read David Foster Wallace's essay on the making of Lost Highway?
No, I don't really enjoy David Foster Wallace.
And that's the next thing I was coming to. Is that still cleverness that's getting at you with Wallace, or?
No, it's not cleverness. It's I don't know what it is. I haven't been able to figure it out. But I read Infinite Jest. It took me a month, and I think I only finished it because I was bedridden and sick. And
you were an invalid, so you picked up Infinite Jest.
And it was funny.
Yeah.
But it was 1,000 pages long, and I don't really get the whole. I can't tell my usual story about why I don't like these male books because we're on the radio. But it's just so ridiculously male. I don't know how else to say it. It's just I wrote 1,000 pages.
You're saying it's a man's thing just to want to write a giant book and foist it on people?
I don't know if it's just the American male writers, contemporary, who write these huge books, and it has no appeal to me at all. And I don't mean to blame it on their masculinity, but
sure.
But it does seem to be this sort of male thing. I don't know how else to say this without going in for an hour-long conversation about male literature versus female literature and the imbalance of masculinity. Okay,
so we'll move on to the other side of the coin. You've talked about feminism occasionally on the blog. Mm-hmm. Where do you think feminism has a place in literature, or does it?
I don't know if it has a place in literature. I think it has a place in how we treat one another and relate to one another. So I think, if you view women as, nice little storytellers, which does happen a lot in the literary scene, women writers are not reviewed as often as male writers. Women writers are not assigned reviews as often as, like in the New York Times.
Yeah.
And it really does have an effect. And so I think just saying that out loud is important, and you do get called, as I have, on, somebody will call me a knee-jerk feminist on somebody's blog, and I'm like, no, these things are true. You can look it up, and I'm sorry if my pointing it out bothers you, but it happens, and why can't we talk about that?
What does the concept of feminism mean to you in 2007? Is it a different thing than it once was?
No, I think it's always been the definition of it, which is the equality of men and women. I mean, I think that for some reason it makes people think you're crazy when you point out that that males hold more power than women do in today's society, and it's you just, okay, can we count the men currently in power in the United States government? So,
on the one hand, you could say that women are just, they're too sensible to go into government. They know it's nuts.
Oh, that's such a reduction of the argument.
I know, I'm just saying there's something you can say there, that's all.
I know, but, it's so much more complicated than who our president is. It's, on every single level, and a lot of people just don't want to say it, so I will, because I have no problems with it.
Well, Jessa, thank you so much for coming on the Marketplace of Ideas.
Sure.
Pay a visit to all things Bookslut online at www.bookslut.com. All of the Marketplace of Ideas music is produced by Ben Althouse. Check out his website, benalthouse.com. That's BenAlthouse. He's also been known to go under the names Ice Ben and DJ Concept. Check out his grooves on benalthouse.com. Be sure to check out our website, www.colinmarshallradio.com/marketplace. All feedback, please direct to colin@colinmarshallradio.com. And we hope to see you soon on the next episode of the Marketplace of Ideas.